In this video, we'll look at how to read the sources in the exams for clear and relevant meanings so that you can answer the questions clearly when those questions come around. To do that, we'll look at skimming and scanning to understand the texts. So the first thing you should do is skim read for first impressions. Read quickly so you can get a first impression of what the story is about and who the main characters are in the source. It is not enough to start answering questions, so don't. It's just to settle your nerves, make sure that you settle into the exam and give you a brief understanding of what the source is really about so that you can move deeper into the story, the ideas, the writers, the characters in the second reading. Practice reading for meaning. Don't let the exam be the first time that you practice doing this. Read quickly so you can get a quick understanding of some texts, but then practice reading for meaning, going paragraph by paragraph, so you can really see how the story moves on and progresses, paragraph at a time. Scan the text carefully, one paragraph at a time. Each paragraph gives you valuable information about how the story develops from that character or writer's point of view. So once you've read it quickly, the second reading, you already know what's going to happen. So break each paragraph down, sum them up. What is that paragraph about? How do the characters feel? Is there a change of setting, or might change the mood or change the idea of the piece? What does the writer want you to take away from that small section of the text so that you can link it to the ones that come before it and after it? Practice how to annotate. There's different ways to annotate. You can underline text, you can highlight, you can write notes in margins, circle words or phrases. You can, of course, do this in the exam as well with the inserts. So practice doing it so you can find key points, interesting points quickly. All the answers you need to pass are in the sources. There's no trick questions and no red herrings in GCSE. The texts are developed and adapted and found for you so that they can capture everyone taking the exam at different levels. You can read the text with simplicity if you wish, but that doesn't mean that you're going to pass. If you read deeply into it, you're more likely, of course, to explain levels of text that some students are not going to get to. And by getting to those deeper places into the text, you're more perceptive, you can get higher marks out of it. So the key is always to look at your question, find the quotes that answer the question, and explain those quotes clearly and relevantly, linking back to terminology, the characters or the writer's opinions if it's paper 2, and of course the story overall. So if we look at a paper 1 example, this is from the November 2019 text with Zoe and Jake in the mountain. If we look at the overall, we've got Zoe on the mountain, but if we can break it down as we go, we can leave ourselves notes to see what that paragraph's about, how the story progresses. So it was snowing again. Gentle 6-pointed flakes from her picture book were settling on her jacket sleeve. The mountain air prickled with ice and the smell of pine resin. Several hundred meters below lay the dark outline of St. Bernard-in-Haut, their Pyrenean resort village. Across to the west, the irregular peaks of the mountain range. It's clearly on a mountain. There's gentle snow. There's a village below. Just leave yourself notes for what that paragraph's about. As you progress and as you get better with those notes, you may find that you start putting structural features in there, which is great. There's no need to put language features in there at all. You'll get to that question when the question comes. It's question 2. But as the story progresses, you may find paragraphs are bigger or smaller than the next one. The piece becomes faster or slower, that the characters move in and out of the story as it goes. And in this one, this is the paper 2 example. They're quite big opening paragraphs to the George Orwell text. Early one morning, the sub-inspector at another police station at the other end of town rang me up on the phone and said that an elephant was ravaging the bazaar. Would I please come and do something about it? I did not know what I can do, but I wanted to see what was happening, and I started out. I took my rifle, much too small to kill an elephant, but I thought the noise might be useful. So it's early morning. There's an elephant in the marketplace. Orwell's been asked to sort it out. He's curious, so he decides to go and have a look. But he takes a rifle with him. Not really because he knows it's going to be enough, but it might scare the elephant. It's a kind of calm and slow start in exploration to the story, which of course will be a lot bigger in scale and a lot more intimidating and scary in scope by the end of it. So make sure you have a good understanding of the story that you've read. I would always recommend summing it up with these key points: who, what, where, when, and how. That way you've summed up the story, you've got a good sense of the foundational quality to the story, who the characters are or the writers in paper 2, what's the story about overall, where is it set, how do the people change in the story depending on whether they're inside, outside, on a mountain or in a cafe. Depends where they are. Okay, it depends if that will illustrate if they're happy or sad or tense or not. When can be the past, present, or future, but it could also be the duration of the story or the time of the day. And think about how the characters feel in those moments, because it will change moment to moment depending on their life experiences and the situations that they're in and the places they're in. Your job to pass GCSE is to clearly explain why these things happen. Don't start answering questions until you're ready to. You've got 15 minutes to read the sources in paper 1, and the same 15 minutes for paper 2 is twice as much reading in paper 2, but you don't get any extra time. But you do get 15, so please take all 15 at least. You are marked always on the quality of your answers, not how fast you can read and how quickly you can write. So read slowly, read for depth, and take your time in your responses. Allow yourself those timed allocations before you move on to the next question. It can help settle the nerves if you look at the exam questions first. You should know, and you should be fully prepared to know which questions come up. But I mean, absolutely exactly what the question is based on the text that you've had that time on that day in the exam. The key is to practice and revise. Practice by reading stories for paper 1, watch films and TV dramas for paper 1 as well. They're all narratives, they're all about characters in settings achieving goals or not achieving their goals. For paper 2, the best piece of advice is for the newspaper articles is to read The Guardian, because most of the time they do come from that source. Once you have read quickly, the next thing you need to do is scan thoroughly, see how paragraphs link to each other, and take those 15 minutes so that you are in the best position that you can be to answer those questions that will now follow.